Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we sift through the noise and give you the essential insights you need to stay well informed. You know that classic startup dilemma, right? You're racing against the clock, constantly innovating, but how do you maintain that breakneck pace without your entire operation just unraveling? It's a common story, really, and one we've seen play out many times. Emmanuel Bakari, in his book, he brings to life the journey of Aqua House, that AI-powered water quality sensor startup. They had this explosive growth, but nearly imploded because their processes were just unchecked. They scaled from 5 to 50 employees in, just 18 months? Revenue doubling quarterly. I mean, on the surface, it sounds like every founder's dream.
It truly does, yeah, but that rapid success, it kind of concealed a quiet catastrophe brewing underneath. Their processes, or maybe the lack of them, were buckling under all that pressure. They faced data stream lag, network access issues, unexpected installation and logistic delays in remote regions, a surge of customer complaints, and just rampant team burnout.
And the fallout.
Yeah, the fallout was a staggering $150,000 in direct costs. And honestly, it was a near-fatal blow to their future. It's such a powerful reminder. Innovation without robust, adaptable processes isn't just inefficient. It's a recipe for collapse.
Absolutely. And that's exactly why we're deep into Series 3 of the Deep Dive. We're pulling back the curtain on these advanced methodologies for process improvement, specifically in startups. We've already explored the transformative power of Kaizen, that philosophy of continuous daily improvement through small incremental changes. And we demystified Six Sigma, showing how its data-driven approach can dramatically reduce errors and variation even for early-stage companies by really getting to the root of problems.
Right. And today, we're bringing another incredibly powerful methodology into sharp focus, Agile. Now, while most people instinctively associate Agile with, software development.
Yeah, that's what I think of.
Exactly. But we're going to dive deep into how its core principles are profoundly relevant and impactful for any operational process improvement, especially in these dynamic startup environments. It's far more than just a coding framework.
Okay, interesting. So our mission today is to explore how adopting an agile mindset, one that emphasizes flexibility, rapid iteration, responsiveness to change, how that can make operational processes incredibly adaptable and efficient. You'll discover how these frameworks can be leveraged for designing and continuously improving non-software processes, helping you move fast and build enduring value. So yeah, let's really get into this.
Okay, so what's fascinating here is understanding that Agile isn't just a set of practices, it's truly a mindset. It promotes flexibility, rapid iteration, and responsiveness to change in almost any context. When we apply it to processes, it's really about designing systems that are inherently as adaptable as the startup environment itself.
That sounds like a fundamental departure from how we traditionally think about process design, doesn't it? Because often you conjure up these images of a comprehensive, detailed upfront plan, requires significant upfront investment, and then you only get infrequent major updates.
Right.
For a startup trying to sprint, that approach feels like it would lead directly to, analysis paralysis.
It absolutely would, yeah. Traditional process development, with its long planning cycles and rigid structure, it often leaves startups bogged down before they even launch properly. Agile, in stark contrast, is iterative and quick to deploy, and the benefits are clear. You gain fast feedback and immediate learning. This directly combats that analysis paralysis that can just cripple startups.
Right.
If you glance at Figure 4.2 in the source material, you'll see it vividly contrasts a minimum viable process, or MVP, with traditional process development. The MVP is built in these small, iterative cycles, focusing only on core features first. Allows for quick deployment and learning, traditional methods. They demand that comprehensive, detailed design before anything ever goes live. Huge difference.
Okay, so we're truly talking about moving beyond that old, kind of infamous, move fast and break things mantra.
Yes.
The book emphatically highlights that this idea is basically obsolete for today's landscape. The real winners now move fast and build enduring value. And what I'm hearing is that Agile isn't just a philosophy. It provides a concrete, battle-tested blueprint for how to actually achieve that sustained long-term value. How does it help build enduring value, though, not just rapid movement?
Yeah, that's a crucial distinction. It's not just about iterating faster, but about iterating smarter. By constantly validating every tiny process change with real data and real feedback, you're not just moving fast, you're ensuring every single step contributes directly to sustainable growth. You avoid accumulating that operational debt, those hidden inefficiencies and workarounds that just pile up and eventually drag a company down.
Right, the hidden costs.
Exactly. Agile helps you identify and fix these issues sort of on the fly, building a robust, resilient foundation as you grow. And that's absolutely key to enduring value.
That makes so much sense. Okay. And a core tenet of Agile that applies directly here is validated learning. Can you expand on what that looks like in a process context?
Certainly. So instead of designing these comprehensive processes based on a stack of, frankly, untested assumptions,
Mm-hmm.
Agile encourages you to create clear hypotheses about how a process will work.
Hmm.
Then you test these hypotheses with minimal investment, gather real-world data, and learn from the results before you even think about scaling.
So we're talking about running process experiments, right? Like designing a small-scale change to a workflow and seeing how it impacts output, maybe, or testing a new control to see if it actually reduces errors,
Exactly.
or perhaps even seeing if a new piece of documentation helps people, rather than just creating it because we think it should exist. Can you give me a quick, maybe even slightly humorous example?
Yeah, absolutely. For instance, if you're trying to streamline how new employees get their IT access, right, instead of mapping out some grand multi-departmental flow diagram,
Which could take weeks.
right, your first process experiment might just involve one new hire and a simple shared checklist. That's it. Your hypothesis might be, this checklist will reduce IT setup time for new hires by 50% for this test. You run it, you see what happens, and then you adapt. And that directly leads us to the concept of a minimum viable process, or MVP.
Ah, the MVP. Not just for products, then. So in the process context, an MVP means implementing the simplest version of a process that meets the basic needs, and then iterating based on actual usage and feedback.
Precisely. And this approach is honestly a lifesaver for startups. It actively prevents that over-engineering and bureaucracy, which, as the source material points out, are such common startup killers. It's about embracing the good enough today that creates more value than holding out for some perfect tomorrow, which, let's face it, often never arrives. This aligns perfectly with Chapter 5 Pragmatism Principle.
And I remember Figure 2.3, the lightweight process documentation approaches like visual process maps or those one-page guides. Those are perfect examples of MVP documentation that avoid that bureaucratic overhead. It's about getting it working, then making it better.
That's it, exactly. And to drive all of this, we use the Build, Measure, Learn loop, the BML loop. This is really the core mechanism for validated learning in operational contexts.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. How does this BML loop actually work for a process? Can you walk us through the steps?
Absolutely. So you start with Build. You implement focused process experiments. These should be hypothesis-driven, have minimal scope, be rapidly implementable, we're talking days, maybe not weeks, and have clear, measurable success criteria. For example, if you're streamlining a customer support process, you might build, say, a new simplified intake form and just try it with a handful of agents first.
Okay, build small, then you measure. What kind of data are we looking for there to truly understand what's happening? Not just like, did it work?
Good question. You collect meaningful data, including both leading indicators. Those are the early feedback signals that predict future performance, like maybe the time it takes an agent to fill out the form or the number of fields they leave blank.
Ah, okay.
And crucially, lagging indicators, which confirm the actual ultimate business impact, things like a reduction in resolution time or an increase in customer satisfaction scores.
Mhm.
But critically, you also gather qualitative feedback from the users themselves, the agents, the customers.
The human element.
Exactly. This helps you understand the why behind the numbers, spot unexpected effects, and uncover pain points that data alone might completely miss.
Right. And once you have all that data, the quantitative and the qualitative you learn, how do you transform that information into actionable insights?
Well, you schedule regular brief reviews, often daily or weekly, depending on the cycle. Encourage root cause analysis, not just looking at what happened, but why it happened. Look for patterns. The goal is to transform that raw data into actionable insights like, okay, this part of the form causes confusion because of X, or agents are skipping step Y, indicating maybe it's not truly necessary.
Got it. And finally, you iterate. This is where the continuous improvement truly happens, right? Driving further refinement.
Precisely. You use those hard-won insights to drive continuous incremental improvements. You amplify what works well, you eliminate what doesn't, and importantly, you share those learnings across teams. That prevents similar issues elsewhere or helps replicate successes. It's designed as a never-ending cycle of refinement.
That's incredibly powerful. Do we have some real-world examples of this BML loop in action for, non-software processes?
We absolutely do. Consider Cloud Secure's customer onboarding process. They applied BML by starting with a surprisingly simple checklist for new customers, just a checklist. They tracked metrics like time to first value for the customer, the number of support tickets filed during onboarding, and their net promoter score, say, at 30 days.
Okay, standard metrics.
Right. They reviewed these metrics weekly, and over just 3 months, they iterated through 5 different versions of that onboarding process, each one simpler and more effective. The result: a remarkable 60% reduction in onboarding time and a 40% improvement in customer satisfaction, just from iterating on a checklist.
Wow, that's a massive impact from something so seemingly small. Incredible. What about Growth Engine's lead qualification process? Any insights there?
Yeah, Growth Engine used BML to test a hypothesis about their marketing qualified leads, or MQLs. Initial data showed improved sales acceptance rates, which, seemed like a win.
Looks good on paper.
Exactly. But surprisingly, their overall conversion rate for those leads actually decreased. So, further investigation, really fueled by qualitative feedback from the sales team.
Ah, talking to the team.
Yes. It revealed that marketing and sales were using misaligned qualification criteria. They weren't on the same page. They swiftly adjusted the process based on that feedback, and in the very next cycle, they saw a 35% increase in conversion rates. This perfectly illustrates the power of validated learning. Even when initial results seem good, the full picture, including that qualitative piece, might reveal an opportunity for a crucial pivot.
That's a fantastic example of adapting based on real-world data and feedback, not just assumptions or initial numbers. Now, let's connect this to the foundational Agile Manifesto Principles. How do those sort of iconic statements apply when we're talking about processes, not just software development?
Yeah, let's break them down. First, individuals and interactions over processes and tools. This basically means prioritizing direct communication and collaboration within teams over just rigidly adhering to predefined process steps or relying solely on specific tools. It's about empowering the people to make the process work rather than letting the process dictate everything that people do.
So it's less about having the perfect, complex flowchart and more about ensuring that the team members themselves are actually talking, sharing information, and solving problems directly. That sounds far more dynamic for a startup environment.
Exactly. Much more fluid. The next principle is working solutions over comprehensive documentation. The focus here is on having functional, effective processes up and running quickly, even if the documentation isn't exhaustive or, perfect. This lines perfectly with that MVP concept we just discussed and the idea of minimal viable documentation. It's about getting value now, not documenting forever.
Which, again, actively fights that analysis paralysis we talked about earlier. Okay, makes sense. And customer collaboration over contract negotiation. How does that translate to process improvement?
Right. This stresses the value of continuous engagement with the customer of the process, and that customer could be an internal team receiving the output or an external end user. It's about ensuring the process truly meets their needs and adapting as those needs evolve, rather than, say, defining rigid requirements upfront and sticking to them no matter what happens in the real world. This is a core part of building in those built-in feedback loops we saw in Figure 2.4. For instance, in a customer service process, that might mean a quick automated follow-up survey after every interaction, perhaps, or regular brief check-ins with the sales team if they're the customer of a lead generation process.
Constant feedback, constant adjustment. Okay. And finally, responding to changeover following a plan. This seems almost tailor-made for the unpredictable nature of startups.
It absolutely is. In these dynamic startup environments, the ability to adapt processes quickly based on new information or changing market circumstances is far more valuable than strictly following some initial rigid plan. A static plan just quickly becomes irrelevant in a fast-changing market, doesn't it? The cost of not adapting is often losing market share or failing to meet evolving customer demands. Agile makes that adaptation not just possible, but really central to its whole approach.
So how does all this translate into Agile in action for broader process improvement efforts? I'm thinking about how iteration teams and adaptation really come together practically.
Well, iterative process development is absolutely fundamental. The process improvement work itself can be broken down into short, iterative cycles, very much like software sprints. This enables rapid experimentation and quick execution with those built-in feedback loops for continuous adaptation.
So it's never really a one-and-done project. You're constantly refining, constantly improving. This connects perfectly to what we learned about iterative enhancement back in Chapter 5 and how we can accelerate improvement cycles, even like those structured, rapid DMAI cycles for quality improvement from Chapter 8 to truly match startup timelines.
Precisely. And to make those iterations effective, you absolutely need cross-functional teams in process improvement. It's about bringing together collaborative teams with diverse expertise, not just the process owners, but those who interact with it from different angles: sales, marketing, operations, support.
Everyone involved.
Everyone involved. This strongly links to that principle of involving the doers from Chapter 5. I mean, those who actually perform the process possess the deepest knowledge, right? And involving them significantly boosts buy-in for changes and helps identify practical implementation challenges that, frankly, no one else would foresee.
That makes perfect sense. The people on the ground know what actually works and where the real friction points are hidden. Okay. And what about planning in this kind of agile environment? It sounds less about a rigid, long-term plan laid out in stone.
You're spot on. It's much more about adaptive planning. This means continuous planning and roadmap evolution that responds to new insights and changing business conditions. It ensures that process development stays flexible and relevant as the startup learns and grows, rather than becoming outdated the moment it's written down. Chapter 14's description of Agile really highlights this. It's a living roadmap, not a static blueprint collecting dust.
Can you give us an example of how this adaptive planning, cross-functional teams, and iteration all come together, perhaps on a slightly larger scale?
Sure. Consider the case of global freight logistics supply chain transformation, which is touched on briefly in Figure CS 3.2. Instead of embarking on some huge, multi-year, fixed supply chain overhaul.
The traditional big project.
It's exactly. They incorporated Agile principles by emphasizing flexibility and responsiveness in their planning and execution processes. They formed cross-functional teams that included everyone from warehouse managers to customer service reps, IT folks, finance. They broke the transformation into shorter, iterative cycles, continually adjusting their supply chain processes to adapt to changing customer needs or shifts in fuel prices or new regulatory environments, things that always pop up. This allowed for a much more dynamic and effective operation that could pivot rapidly, something a traditional waterfall-style approach could never achieve.
This has been a super insightful deep dive into Agile for process improvement, really practical stuff. So what's our most actionable takeaway for someone listening right now, perhaps feeling a bit overwhelmed by their own startup's process chaos?
Okay, the main thing is this. When planning your next process improvement initiative, please don't try to build the perfect monolithic solution from day one. It's tempting, but resist. Instead, break it down into smaller, manageable, iterative sprints. And gather feedback frequently, not just at the end when it's too late. Start with the absolute simplest version that meets the core needs, and let real-world usage and feedback guide its evolution. Resist that urge to over-engineer before you even have data. Start small, learn fast.
That's a really practical and powerful approach that cuts through the complexity. Love it. So to recap then, Agile methodologies provide an incredible framework for process improvement in startups because they prioritize flexibility, rapid iteration, and responsiveness to change. They empower you to build processes that can actually adapt and grow with your business, rather than becoming those rigid, bureaucratic obstacles that just stifle innovation. This proactive approach helps you avoid those hidden costs of process neglect by catching errors and inefficiencies early through continuous learning and adaptation.
And remember, Agile isn't just a standalone solution. It's actually a critical piece of the unified magic methodology that we'll be discussing very soon. It beautifully complements the efficiency gained from Lean, the quality focus from Six Sigma, and it builds on the daily improvements of Kaizen, creating a really powerful integrated system for improvement.
Fantastic. Okay, so in our next deep dive, we'll bring it all together as we explore the unified magic and how to strategically integrate these powerful methodologies for truly holistic improvement, tackling those common startup killers head on.
Sounds good. So here's maybe a provocative thought for you to chew on until then. If your processes aren't designed to learn and adapt as fast as your market changes, are they truly enabling your growth, or are they actually hindering it?
Ooh, something important to ponder indeed. That's all for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.